Well, welcome everyone. I'm not particularly familiar with the platform, so I'm not sure who's watching or who's here. But I see a few people in the viewers section, and um, one of our other speakers is having a little bit of a technical problem, but hopefully will be joining us soon. But my name is Willie Oppenheim, and it's really a pleasure to welcome you all to this session. It's a short session where we're excited to just share a little bit of our work and maybe open a bit of broader discussion. Um, I'm going to introduce the session in a broader sense before we hear from the rest of our team here. But why don't we just start with some very quick introductions of just who we are and what we do, and where we are. So my name is Willie. I'm calling in from Seattle, Washington in the Western United States, and I'm one of the co-directors of an organization called Omprakash, which I'll be telling you more about soon. And I'll pass it on to Mark.
Hey everyone, my name is Mark Anthony. I'm calling in from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I also work for Umprakash in a dual role that I'll talk about later, but currently as a mentor for students and a support system for our partners within the network.
Hola a todos. Hello everyone. My name is Barbara. I work with Sicanda. We are a non-profit organization based in Oaxaca, which is a state in the southern region of Mexico.
Wonderful. And then our fourth panelist is named Nadia Mukani, who's here as a viewer, and we're trying to enable Nadia to be a presenter as well. But Nadia is a PhD student at University of California, Davis, and a current participant in some of our Omprakash programs. So that's who we are. And now, again, I'm going to give just sort of a brief introduction to this we're trying to explore here, and then I'm really excited to hand it over to my colleagues, and I hope that it's possible for all of the viewers to join in the conversation. I'm not totally sure if we're set up for that, but that's been my assumption. Apologies if I sort of missed the memo or if I'm not doing something right here. The title of this session is Anti-Racist Pedagogy Through Digital Learning and Online Social Impact Internships. It's an ambitious title because the title implies that somehow we can use online learning and we can use this thing called online social impact internships to somehow or other promote and enact anti-racist pedagogy and anti-racist ways of teaching and learning and shaping the world. And I want to just acknowledge from the very outset that this is a really ambitious and sort of aspirational framing. And I don't want to make the claim that somehow we're the experts, we're doing this, we've got it all figured out. Of course not. But I do want to share a bit about how we've each in our own ways been working to towards that bold aspiration. And I think it helps to start with a definition of anti-racism. What are we even talking about here? It's obviously a term that has come more into the mainstream in the last 9 months or so. But I think if we are too broad with that term and we sort of say, oh yeah, anything that's about like understanding across differences or promoting, awareness, I think it sort of loses its meaning. So I want to use a more specific term here, which is, pedagogical approaches to teaching and learning that directly attempt to identify, confront, and ultimately dismantle or deconstruct systems of oppression and inequality that are structured primarily along lines of race. That's obviously what what we're talking about with anti-racism. But I want to expand it a little bit to also think about other axes of inequality. And you might hear from some of my co-presenters a bit about how we use some of these same approaches to think about combating structures of racial inequality, as well as, for example, gender inequality or broader economic inequality. And I'm not trying to conflate those things, but I'm just acknowledging that they're interconnected. So hopefully that works as sort of like a starting definition for us of what we're trying to be talking about here. And I think that if we say we're going to put a bunch of people in a room together face to face, and we're going to dig in and go through this deep process of identifying our biases and reflecting on our positionality and discussing the structures of power and the hierarchies in which we're embedded, that itself is very difficult. This is very difficult work. And so trying to do it online through digital space is even more so. And that's what I mean when I say that this is a very ambitious title, an ambitious task that we've set forth here. But that's what we want to talk about. So I'm just going to say a little more to introduce Om Prakash, and then I'll hand it over. Om Prakash is a US-based nonprofit. We've been around for about 16 years, and there are two main things that we do. The first is we, over the years, have built a network of social impact partner organizations around the world, including in the US. It's about 200 organizations in 50 countries. Barbara represents one of them, and we'll be hearing more from her. And these partners use our platform to recruit volunteers and interns, to fundraise, to connect with each other, to do various capacity building programs that we offer, and so on. These partners are broadly speaking social impact organizations, but they work in fields including health, education, migration, human rights, conservation, entrepreneurship, all over the map. So on the first level, Om Prakash is this network of partners, and we're really excited to offer that network to the world for free. So you don't need to pay us to somehow access this network. Anyone, students, faculty, anyone can go to our site and browse our partners and connect with them directly. And I could go on and on about how that's a huge part of our ethos, and we're trying to get away from the commodification of global learning and volunteering, but that's not really what this presentation is about. Although it's related insofar as this is about confronting historically embedded inequalities and trying to put a new way forward. So that's the first pillar of what Om Prakash is about, this ecosystem of partners and trying to connect them with each other and with students and universities in a non-commodified way. The second major thing that we do is we offer a really robust and customizable online learning platform called Edge. And I want to pause. I see that Nadia has been able to join as a speaker, which is wonderful. Thanks, Nadia. And thanks to Araceli and others at Ashoka for making this possible. That's great. So the second major thing that Om Prakash does is we offer this online learning platform called Edge. And when we first developed the Edge program about 8 years ago, the idea was that it would be pre-departure training for students who were preparing to volunteer with our partners. And in that training, we asked big questions about who are you? How are you positioned? How are you positioned in relation to global structures of power and privilege and inequality? What is it that you're trying to do? Oh, you're trying to help others. You're trying to do good. Well, what are the many ways that it's actually difficult and complicated to try to do good, especially when crossing differences of culture and power? And we've talked a lot about why does the world look the way it does, and what are the social, political, economic, historical factors that have created this world where, at the one hand, we have apparently tremendous progress, and on the other hand, huge and unprecedented and persistent inequality. So we started developing this online course, and it's not just a course, it's a whole learning and mentorship platform. And we started doing that about 8 years ago, again, with the idea that this is pre-departure training for our volunteers. But we very quickly realized actually these core questions about power, privilege, difference, identity, inequality, these questions are relevant to so many people in so many contexts, regardless of if they're volunteering abroad or with an Om Prakash partner or anything. So today we work with dozens of different partnering universities, schools, nonprofits to help them build their own customized EDGE programs. It could be to support an online internship program. It could be to support a local community engagement program. It could be to support study abroad. there's all kinds of things we can do, but the main point is we're sort of in the space of using online learning to provoke really big, challenging conversations about power, difference, inequality, and trying to name these structures of inequality and think about how to dismantle them. In the context of COVID, most students are not traveling to work with our partners, so there's also this online internship stuff going on, which we'll hear a bit more about. But all of this is just to set up this larger conversation of Prakash is a nonprofit. We partner with lots of different people and organizations, and we try to facilitate conversations that are informed by and a manifestation of this sort of anti-racist pedagogy. And it's really hard, but that's what this presentation is about. And I'm now really happy to hand it over to Mark to talk a bit more about how we actually do this and what it looks like.
Awesome. Thanks, Willie. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience since I have a really interesting role that I play in both working as a mentor and with our partners within the network. So a little bit about me is that I've been working in sort of this global development sector for a little bit years now in various project, program, and portfolio management positions for governmental and non-governmental organizations all around the world. And so these are a lot of the same things that I personally have been grappling with, especially as an American working in aid, in trying to figure out how do I also not perpetuate a lot of the systems that are also causing the harm in the first place. And so I think it's first important to start by saying that, we all play a role in perpetuating sort of especially in this field of work, a very paternalistic, neo-colonial, racist system, one way or another. It's just sort of almost inherent in the globalized economy that we've built, which is why it's so important. And why I love the EDGE program is because it helps us reflect on our positionality within the system so that we can try to affect change when and where we can, understanding that we are just one person, but collectively we can have a lot of power in changing the way things work. And reflecting on your previous experiences is never easy, and the outcome can be pretty hard to face because most of us are honestly just trying to move with good intentions of wanting to make some sort of positive impact. But that inward reflection and owning up to your past actions can really make it easier to be a little bit more conscious and intentional as you try to move forward, especially in this line of work. Think about my past, and I started out my career in development as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I look back fondly on it 100% and looking at all of the successes that I had as a volunteer. But I can also recognize at the same time that as a recently graduated undergrad with a political science major, I probably wasn't the best person to be, going on to coordinate public health programming in Peru, which is where I was sent. And so since that experience, understanding how I participated in that system, I've been trying to do my part in enacting change when and where I can. And one way I get to do that is through Prakash. And so in my role as a mentor, I get matched up with students who are taking that EDGE Education Through Global Engagement course because they're, it's again pre-departure, so they're about to engage in some sort of social impact or work somewhere in the world. And so as they go through this course with us, they're engaging in those topics of paternalism, global inequalities, power dynamics, and so much more. And I work with them and engage in conversation to sort of take their reflections on the course just a little bit deeper as they try to grapple with that content, which in most cases is actually really challenging to their entire belief systems and what they thought it meant to do good and how you do good. And for me, over time, I start to see the work as sort of like the beginning stages of us all moving from saviors to learners in this type of field, which is much more powerful to be a learner, especially when we think about how much impact you can have as an intern or a volunteer in certain places. And so for the most part, I feel like, students really do take the material to heart. There are some students who do need further conversation to sort of tease out those beliefs. And the mentorship really isn't about making anyone feel bad, but to be there to sort of work together to grow and hold each other accountable so that the end product ends up being someone that, sort of realizes limitations of what they thought they would achieve during this, opportunity that they're going to have as a volunteer. And how to shift that into wanting to just learn more about, where they're going, the situation at hand, and the projects that are happening. Just understanding that there are going to be limitations to what we're going to be able to achieve. And so that's, a part of what I get to do as on the mentor side, engaging with those students over the time of that course. And then I also get to work with our partners within the network, over 200 partners, to tackle, honestly, a lot of those same types of questions, because like I said, we all play a part in it, whether you're the volunteer or you're the actual organization receiving a volunteer. And so I get to coach our partners to really feel empowered to never stray from their organizational project goals to sort of fit the desires of a volunteer, which we can sometimes see ends up happening quite often, because when we have smaller organizations, they really do need that sort of support that a volunteer can provide. But if a volunteer just doesn't want to do certain things, we can see our partners really just shift everything they're trying to do in order best one's position to know what strong community development looks like. And it's important that, if a volunteer is coming to provide that support, that they're linking into what you already have planned and not trying to change everything in order to receive some sort of support. So in that role, I really get to help our partners really push back against the norms and dynamics that we've really honestly established between Western aid and the countries that receive aid. So it's a really great position that I get to be in, and to be able to do it digitally is honestly really, really great. So that's just a little bit about my role and how I get to work within the digital space through this type of pedagogy.
Thanks, Mark. I think it's my turn now, so I'll just jump right ahead. And hello, everyone who's watching and listening. My name is Barbara. I work with Sikanda. We are a nonprofit organization based in Oaxaca, and we work mostly with informal recyclers, or pepenadores, as we call them in Mexico, in or around areas that host a dump site in the state of Oaxaca. We have been Omprakash partners for about a bit over 2 years, and we have learned a lot about this process of becoming a partner and partnering with an organization that has this vision of how volunteering needs to be a process in which people also question themselves, their positionality. The dialogues actually build upon dismantling these structures of inequalities. As in Sikanda, we've had two interesting processes within our partnership with Omprakash. One has been being able to work with volunteers, and because of COVID, we've had most of our volunteers from Omprakash have been online volunteering. And it's been really interesting to sort of flip that experience around, because most people who want to volunteer with us have usually had some image in their minds before about what it's like working with people who are working directly with the garbage, and these very strong, impactful images that are not very dignified, and that sort of build up upon this whole poverty porn idea that sometimes we have before we start volunteering in a particular place. But when volunteering online, I think it's very interesting experience, because volunteers get to question themselves within their own daily lives and their own immediate context. And we've had a couple of experiences in which we are asking them to sort of see what they can learn from what we're able to exchange through online platforms, and what they could do related to that within their own communities, whether it's just sharing a documentary that we have about the situation in Oaxaca, and then sort of raising conversations about that within their own contexts, or working with us through our own learning process, in which we've adapted a lot of the things that we've learned from Omprakash, including something that we now share with all volunteers, which is a letter by Ivan Illich, who is a philosopher and sociologist, that he addressed to volunteers who wanted to volunteer in Mexico in 1968, and which is still very valid and critical, that builds around the idea of good intentions. And what he mentions in this letter is, to hell with good intentions, because we are asking you not to come to help us in Mexico, but rather to sort of question and your own position within this wider structure. And that has been, as Mark said, something that we need to accompany volunteers with, because sometimes they might feel like their own beliefs system questioned a lot. And that might be a bit shocking at first. And it might also lead to wider reflections of who they are and what they're doing, what they want to change or contribute within this process. But it's also very interesting to see how little by little we can start this dialogue more from a very critical perspective, and how that helps build their experience as volunteers and our experience as an organization receiving volunteers from abroad. And the other process we're collaborating with in Omprakash is actually a process directed more towards the Sikanda staff. We are 19 professionals working within this organization, and we are participating in a sort of research project with Omprakash about gender equality and digital learning and social innovation. And in this process, we've been sort of raising a conversation within the Sikana members about what gender equality means to us as professionals working in this particular sector and context and within our own privileges and life stories, and trying to get to a point where we compare that or reflect on our visions of gender inequality as a team with the visions of gender inequality or gender equality that people on the field themselves have, and how these ideas might sometimes be different and conflicted. And what we want to generate is this sort of reflection that even though we are an organization working on the field every day and that we're Mexicans ourselves, etc., we do have to recognize our own places of privileges and our own position within these systems of inequality, and try to never forget that we also need to be in that position of learners and not saviors, and sort of establish more horizontal dialogues and processes to work within people within their own communities. And this has been a very interesting thing to see and to do as a team. And I think that there are a lot of ways in which we can build upon this also by working with volunteers. So I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to leave it to Nadia also, who's going to share a little bit about her experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara, Willie, and Mark. And hello, everyone. My name is Nadia. I am a PhD candidate in the Soils and Biogeochemistry graduate group at UC Davis. And I'm a non-Prakash Edge student. So to build up on all what was said by Willie, Mark, and Barbara about good intentions and that are not enough, and we need to learn how to do good. I wanted to share with you all today some stories and experiences working with my experiences working with the farming communities, and why I think empathy is an essential part when it comes to address inequalities and superiority. So I think that one of the ways, among several others, to be anti-racist is to build a sense of empathy, to imagine yourself in other people's situation and to try to understand them. As part of my undergraduate studies in agronomic engineering, I interned with different farming communities across the country during each of my 5 years of education. Every internship had a specific aim and targeted farming communities in different regions, but the main aim was first to learn how to build a human connection with the communities that we would closely work with. Every year, I would go live with a farmer and experience their day-to-day life. While I'm at the farm, I had to be open to learn from the farmers and not assume that I know everything. I had to do whatever the farmer is doing. For instance, if a farmer wakes up at 4 a.m., I had to wake up at the same time, harvest, irrigate, and even milk a cow. These acts, maybe they seem small and like seemingly small, but they were very crucial to understand deeper and more complicated questions, such as what the land means to the farm, why these communities are still cultivating cannabis when it became prohibited, and what prevent them from switching to other specialty crops. With every experience, I learned something about myself. I questioned myself, and I learned something about the community as well. I learned that so many times to be able to understand communities' needs and build a sense of empathy, I needed to listen. First, listen without interfering, without judgment, and without rushing to offer solution. Just listen. Listening opens door to building trust. Listening carefully means that we care. Now, almost 9 years after my graduation, I still carry with me a lot of stories. Stories that shaped my way of thinking, acting, stories that are the drive behind me coming here to pursue my graduate studies. And whenever I think about smallholder farmers, I remember all the faces that I worked with. Finally, I would say that one of the greatest lessons that I learned is that empathy helps us notice the human parts in each and every one of us and helps us act from a place of mutual respect to learn and move forward together. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all three of the presenters. It's so nice to hear these diverse experiences, and hopefully it starts to paint a bit of a picture for the audience. And I would love now, we just have a few minutes left, but the point of this sparks ideas and questions. So I'd love to open it up for that. Again, I'm not sure if you're even able to unmute in the audience. I'm sorry about that, but if anyone has questions or comments in the chat, please feel free to add them there. And one, broad question that I'll just put out to everyone is, again, I want to hold ourselves accountable and challenge ourselves and not sort of put out some sort of triumphant narrative. And so, you all have just heard different perspectives from me, from Mark working as a mentor and a partner advisor, from Barbara working, leading one of our partner organizations in Mexico, and from Nadia as a student. We've all described different aspects of this under this banner of anti-racist pedagogy. And I'm curious, does this amount to anti-racist pedagogy in your opinions? To what extent does it sound like these efforts are successfully identifying and dismantling structures of racial inequality or other forms of inequality, or in what ways might they be falling short? I'd love to hear questions from the audience on that, or if any of the panelists want to speak up on that question as well, please feel free. Well, thanks again, everyone, for being, and the clock is winding down here. So I'll just say, if you want to learn more about Omprakash, you can see our website right there. I'll put it in the chat as well. And likewise, if you want to learn more about Sikanda, we'd love to hear from you. And we're excited to be sharing ideas and continuing to improve and expand this work. And maybe the last point I'll make is just that I don't think this kind of thing is a one-size-fits-all project. There's not going to be one model that sort of is the perfect fit for every organization and every student. But we've tried to build a platform that's very adaptable and that we can use to build different programs in collaboration with different universities and other collaborators. And hope, in all humility, I'd like to believe that we're making good steps in a good direction. So I'd really open to critical feedback and questions, and thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks everyone for listening, and
Sure.
It was very nice to share with you all.
It was definitely nice sharing. One more thing I would add, just something to think about. What I like about the model that we have is that you can actually engage in the dialogue and conversations with everyone that's in your cohort and class, whereas you try to have these same conversations on social media or offline, and they never really end up in a productive dialogue. And so that's also just another comparison I wanted to draw, that when you're sort of in our online learning platform, people really are open to actually engaging each other just a little bit more critically, and to actually understanding each other's point of view, which is a lot harder to do, I think, in other types of online spaces.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And actually, on that note, I did pull this up to share if anyone is still here and interested. Oh, wow, look at that little, that's crazy. So, okay, Barbara this is a preview of the Edge classroom, or the Edge dashboard, and we build lots of different programs, as I mentioned. Here's one for Florida State University. But I just wanted to kind of show you the example of what of what Barbara had mentioned, which is, and it's related to what Mark Anthony is also talking about here. So here's this famous essay by Ivan Illich, "To Hell with Good Intentions." And many of you in the audience might already be familiar with this, and you email it out to your students already, or there's lots of ways to access this content. You could just Google it. But what's cool about Edge, in my opinion, is that as students read, they have this whole comment thread here where they can be sharing their reflections and communicating with each other. And then someone like Mark, who's a mentor, can come in, even asynchronously, even if this was 2 months ago, can come in and mention someone and reply to what they've written. And in that way, we really try to make it an ongoing conversation. Likewise, there's all these chat functionalities where you can have one-on-one chat or group chat with other members of your cohort. And then there's the roundtable, which is kind of allowing you to take that conversation even further. And so every student within the roundtable can create multimedia digital storytelling posts and can share their broader reflections, and others in the cohort, mentors as well as peer students, can add their comments and so on. So I just wanted to kind of give that little glimpse because I think it's important. The point of this session is not just to showcase a tech platform, but on the other hand, if we are talking about digital pedagogy and asking the hard questions of what does it look like to really facilitate meaningful conversations in digital space, I think the details matter a lot. And that's a little glimpse of what we've been doing. So thanks again, everyone, for being here. And please feel free. I put my contact info in the chat if anyone wants to get a hold of me. But yeah, thanks to my co-presenters and thanks to everyone for being here, and thanks to Ashoka for hosting us.